Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another fantastic edition of Cybersecurity Matters podcast. I'm your co-host, Dominic Vogel, and joining me, as always, is the very dapper Christian Redshaw. Christian, who do we have today on the program?
Well, thank you so much for the compliment. I'm used to actually sitting in your seat giving you the compliment, so it's nice to finally
It's not easy
get
giving you a
some
compliment,
back.
believe me, but go on.
I appreciate it nonetheless. So we have Marcela Denniston from Digital Lantern, and she's based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she has a virtual CISO company, among other things. So I'm looking forward to seeing how she engages with her clients today.
Fantastic. Well, let's pause this awkward banter and let's bring Marcela on and let's have a fantastic convo.
Marcela, thank you so much for being on our show today. So good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So we want to get to know you and we want to let the audience get to know you as well. So my question to you is, how did you get started in cybersecurity? Is it something you've always done, or did you find yourself in it through another career path initially?
Well, I've been doing this my whole career, and my career started when I was actually 17. I joined the Navy, and I did not cybersecurity out of having a passion for it. So I wasn't at home, hacking systems when I was younger. But I did, in fact, get kind of thrown into it just based off of my aptitude. I joined the Navy when I was 17, and I originally went into a field that was a little bit more related to IT. And it was basically managing IT systems and IT cryptographic type systems on ships and different locations for the Navy. But I also joined the Navy when it was right around the Titan Rain timeframe. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that terminology, but it was the initial or the beginnings of what we now know as APT groups, or advanced persistent threats. So cyber was just becoming a big deal when I went into the Navy. And so they started to migrate people that had aptitudes or similar career fields, or were already working in something similar to IT management. And they started migrating us by sending us to specialized school for cyber. And then we all became cyber professionals from that point on. So I started at a very young age, at 17. And I worked initially in the Cyber Defense Operations Center for the Navy, and then transitioned into the Department of Defense and NSA through the Navy as well, and then focused a little bit more on the cyber intelligence and threat intelligence side of the house for most of my career. And when you get out of the Navy and you have a clearance and you have all of this great experience, it seems like it would be a shame to put it to waste. So I stuck to my career field, and it's been very fruitful since then. I definitely branched out a little bit more. I went in the realm of, first I was a government contractor and continued to work with the Department of Defense for quite some time. And then I ventured out to the Middle East in Abu Dhabi and worked with their national government, actually through a consulting firm, to help them develop their cybersecurity capability. I've been here in the Valley now for about 6 or 7 years, working mostly with startups and product companies. And so I looked to kind of expand beyond my government experience a little bit by coming out here and working on the commercial side more. And it's just been a really great ride so far.
Well, that's quite a story, and it's more than actually that I expected. And Dominic, the more exciting guests we hear, the more boring my life feels to me. It feels like our existence is getting more exciting as we get to know people like yourself. So Cyber Lantern is your company. Tell us, what areas you help and what services you provide for them in terms of cybersecurity.
Absolutely. So our company name is actually Digital Lantern, and I know people get a little bit confused between the two. Digital Lantern is the overarching company. As I mentioned, I worked a lot in the Department of Defense, and obviously I've met some brilliant people that I've worked throughout the years with there. So there's been a group of us together on distributed cloud architectures before cloud was even a hot topic again. So upwards of 15 years ago almost now. And we've been working together with Department of Defense projects for quite some time. And I've been harping in on this for many years with the crew of saying, we need to do something on the commercial side with this. We need to do something on the commercial side with this. And then at the about midpoint of last year, I got a phone call and one of the people that I had worked with said, hey, I think it's time for us to finally do that. So we brought up Digital Lantern at the beginning of this year in January. We got it operational, and we do some federal work through Digital Lantern, but the Cyber Lantern side of the house really stemmed from our understanding of how much of an impact there is on, from a national perspective, on the small to mid-sized businesses, local governmentalities getting and breached. So we wanted to try to focus in on that group. And the idea with Cyber Lantern is we are a commercial, it's our commercial branch of Digital Lantern. And what we do is we are providing, first of all, virtual CISO services. So assistance with just strategy, planning. How do you get started with cybersecurity for SMBs that just have and haven't done anything as of yet? And then we also take that into the detection and monitoring component, right? So that could be anything from a need of detection and monitoring compliance reasons, or just companies that are SMEs but have a little bit of a larger net or broader aspect of what they do. So think of like small businesses that are making a lot of money, right? Or have a significant amount of critical assets that they need protecting. Mm-hmm. And so we'll focus on doing detection and monitoring for those companies or augmenting services for local counties. A lot of local counties, obviously, they have a cybersecurity team, but they're very small. They lack a full set of resources. So what we do is we come in and we try to complement those resources. And as I mentioned, our focus is really, we've always had this sense of service through our company because we've done so much work at the national level. And we really wanted to come in and help these little guys, who just, they don't have anywhere to go. They don't have the resources, have the funding to go pay for, FireEye or AT&T to come in and do their security. Mm-hmm. And so we really wanted to target that market. And we're able to do this, first of all, because our team is we have such an excellent team. Some of the people on our team teach at West Point. We have retired generals who code for us. So we just have such an expert team that we're really able to scale out what we do significantly.
Sounds pretty epic.
Yeah. And so we wanted to take that team and really start helping the people who need it most. Some of the other benefits is we do use our own platform that we're developing. And eventually we want to make our platform scale out to other MSSPs as well. And our platform is really focused on prioritizing the tasks that need to be focused on based on a business's needs, right? We all know that there's different needs based on what type of work that you do. And so we're really taking the concept of a platform and aggregating the alerts, but we're doing it very focused on contextual information. So understanding the criticality of the assets that are in play when we see the alerts, understanding directionality of data, what threats are already associated, and then what's the susceptibility, right? Because that makes all the difference. Because if someone's trying to attack me and I'm not vulnerable to that attack, then maybe that's not as important to me. But if I am vulnerable, if I'm susceptible to that, then it makes a difference. And so we use our platform to really hone in on what's important. And that's what allows us to scale out to so many small businesses and provide this service at such an affordable cost.
That's awesome. I do have one more question, Marcela, before I pass the microphone over to my dear friend Dominic here. So you mentioned about you're working with smaller organizations and that they're protecting their assets, their information assets, which is why they want to do cybersecurity, the core reason. What would you say they're protecting it from? And I just want to kind of dial it down for those companies, some that we have dealt with as well, that literally don't even understand what cyber threats are. Who is attacking us? What is the threat that we're protecting ourselves from here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, if we have several hours, I could go into all of the motives and all of the different types of attackers there are. And there's different motives, right? It's just like any kind of theft. It could be anywhere from if you have a business that's very technical and has significant amount of intellectual property. There will be foreign nations that have no issue with coming in and stealing your intellectual property. I ran an intelligence security operations center when I first got here to the Bay Area, and we had a pretty big department store come in and say, hey, we got hacked and we don't know how it happened or why it happened. And when we were done with our investigation, we identified that they had stolen their intellectual property for their e-commerce site, and they were running the exact same e-commerce site in their country. And it looked exactly the same, except it had a slightly different variation to the name. Even the name was the same, but they just changed the lettering to it. And you can imagine that for an organization, if they're trying to do business internationally, that has an economic impact to them, even to our country, if you think about it. Because if your organization that could technically be providing these services internationally is now being copied to a T, based on the technology that you're using, then it takes away from your business. It takes away from your bottom line. So that's definitely one of the areas. It's theft of intellectual property. It's theft of records. That's a big one that we see today, right? Theft of records. Records can be sold in the dark web for significant amounts of money. Health records are sold sometimes for $250 a record. People don't even realize that, right? When they think about healthcare, cybersecurity, records from credit card payment records are sold for, roughly $5 a record. So for attackers, it makes a lot of sense to go out and steal mass amounts of credit card data, right? So there's a lot of theft around data theft. There's theft around intellectual property theft. And then the other one for small businesses that we're really seeing this year significantly are the ransomware attacks, right? And this has just become like the easiest target for anyone, because if they can manage to hack your system and hold your information for ransom, your hands are pretty much tied behind your back unless you have a really good backup. And so that's the one we've been seeing the most taken advantage of with the SMB space, because, regardless of selling a record takes a little bit more effort. But if I just say, hey, I'm not going to give you back your business capabilities until you pay me money, that's a really easy way for a thief to make money, right?
Absolutely. And on that vein there about ransomware, how prevalent, maybe in terms of what you see in terms of contrast, in terms of like private sector and public sector, is it still, ransomware at the public sector level? Are we still seeing that more so with, you mentioned smaller counties and smaller municipalities? Are they being hit harder than some of the larger municipalities, and at least in the public sector, when it comes to ransomware?
I really don't think that the larger municipalities are any less vulnerable at this point, right? We saw the city of Baltimore, we saw New Orleans. We're seeing these attacks be significantly prevalent throughout all the counties, whether they're large or small. And so I don't even think that it's very specific to small organizations. I mean, the ransomware, even with the healthcare system, right? We're seeing large healthcare organizations get hit with ransomware. So the ransomware isn't specific to SMBs. But at the end of the day, because larger businesses are dedicating so much more resources to cybersecurity, it makes it just a much easier target for a cyber criminal to turn to a small business as a result. And because of this, most of the businesses, these people are after money. They typically target, all the employees who handle the finances of an organization too. And I don't think people are aware of that.
Absolutely. And just shifting gears just ever so slightly. So back on that SMB space, in the private sector or small, mid-sized organizations, what types of roadblocks do you run into when you're trying to convince, again, a business owner or CEO or COO, again, in the SMB space, about the importance of cybersecurity? Like, do you run into roadblocks such as, our IT service provider handles that, we're not worried with it, or we have cyber insurance, or we have antivirus, we're good? How often do you, are those roadblocks coming up more often than not in the SMB community? And if so, how do we overcome that?
Yeah, the biggest roadblock I see is that everybody's just ignoring it. I mean, it's not even a matter of, I have antivirus. I mean, most of the small businesses I talk to don't even have antivirus running on their endpoints, right? So they just don't think, it's not going to happen to me is still the mindset, or if it happens to me, I'll deal with it after the fact. And so it's very reactive versus proactive. But to your point, I have heard significantly I have an IT company that I pay to handle all of my IT services. Unless it specifically says in your service level agreement that they're also providing you with cybersecurity, I wouldn't count on the fact that they're sitting there looking for issues, right?
Right.
And so it's very different. It's essentially like saying, okay, I'm going to set up some cameras and I'm going to set up an alarm at the door, but no one's going to monitor those two things. And, no one's going to look to see if anything's happening. And when I say no one's going to monitor them, I'm not even saying like they're not going to, respond to an alert. I'm saying they're not even going to look at the alerts in general. Right. So they're basically IT professionals are there to help you set up your infrastructure. And of course, they're going to put, security measures in place as best as possible or try to use best practices. But most of the time, that's not going to be enough from a cybersecurity perspective. So that's definitely an issue. And then the other one is it's just daunting, right? I'll talk to some organizations and I'm offering them support from the aspect of detection and monitoring. And I tell them, okay, we got to get your logs into our system for us to be able to monitor them for you. And their eyes just get big, right? Even the IT guys. They're just like, oh my gosh, this is another project now that I have to take on. And so the lack of resource and the lack of funding is such a big deal in the SMB space for Cyber.SC. And that's really what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to come in and from the Cyber Lantern perspective, we don't want to take a heavy hand with anyone. We understand that it's daunting. And so our focus is really to just take it in bite-sized pieces. Let's start with some of the basics and the fundamentals and grow out from there. Because something is better than nothing at this rate.
Absolutely. And I love that approach again of, almost like that maturity journey, start with at least doing the basics, do the basics well, and then grow from there. I know we're running low on time, but the one more question for me was, for, the SMB owner or CEO or COO who's watching this, what are one or two key areas of security that they should be looking at? Is it better backups, multi-factor authentication? Given again the current threat landscape, in your mind, what are some key levels, things, or even questions they should be asking to their IT team or IT service provider, at least from a technology perspective, in terms of what should be in place?
Yeah. So I say this to everybody. It's very dependent on what the business model is and what your business is. And why is that the case? It's the case because it's going, your business model and what type of business you're in is going to heavily depend on what is most critical to you. And so we always say you want to focus on whatever is critical to your organization first and secure that the most, right? And the best scenario that I can give them is, imagine you're protecting your house or even your brick and mortar business, right? Of course, you're going to put locks on the doors, but we know that there are windows that can be broken and someone can break in. So if you have, a $20,000 necklace you gave your wife, or you have some sort of very prized possession in your house, then you likely want to go put it in a safe that's, under lock and key, and it's fire safe. And it has all the protections in place because that's a critical component of your life or a prized possession of your life. And the same approach should be taken to the business. So you always focus on protecting your critical assets first. And in the realm of working with your IT teams, I would absolutely say to them, look, these are my critical assets, or this is what is most important to me. What can you do to help me make sure that they stay protected at a minimum if you're working with an IT company? The second component that I would say, because email and passwords are such a big deal for SMBs in general, most organizations that have any digital footprint, everyone's using email, everyone has passwords to get onto their systems. Those are really the two main focuses that I think should take priority. 1 in every 323 emails, I believe, sent to a small business is malicious. Wow. So if you imagine, your inboxes being flooded all day long, that's a significant number. Wow. And if you don't have a staff that understands that and is well trained, then that's going to be an issue because they will click on something that's enticing to them. And trust me, hackers know how to entice you with emails. They know how to tug at your heartstrings and get you to click on things. So outside of emails and making sure that not only are you changing passwords, but even potentially using multi-factor authentications for passwords, meaning, yes, you have a password, but make sure that that person is also utilizing a different type of device to confirm their I apologize, their identity. If that's probably one of like the significant important things to do there, is to really make sure that you're confirming people's identity with more than one factor of authentication when they're logging into their systems. And then lastly, I would say train your employees, train them, hold them accountable. Make, whether you do like Cybersecurity Awareness Month, right? It's October. Say, hey, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Once a year, have a day where you feed everybody, give them pizza, do a few training sessions, have somebody come in and do a few training sessions. Hire someone to come in, there are plenty of third-party companies out there that provide like training videos or training exercises that you could run with your organization. And then once you've given them that training, make them sign a policy or a document that says, hey, I went to this training and I understand that if I click on this, I will be held accountable. Because when you hold people accountable, they are more likely to be responsive and more likely to pay attention.
Marcela, those are awesome tips, and I particularly like the pizza training combo. That's my favorite of the three.
Yes, cybersecurity doesn't need to be boring. You can have some fun with it.
I have one more quick question. We're running out of time here, but if you could just take a minute and talk specifically about how an organization should get started if they are doing effectively nothing and have no idea on the threats or what to do first. In other words, how do you typically engage your clients? Is it come out of the gate with a baseline cyber risk assessment, or what are the first 1, 2, 3 steps?
Yep. So the first thing we do, first of all, reaching this client base is very difficult, right? Because as you said, these people aren't going to like cybersecurity conferences. It's not like the enterprise organizations. They're really not anywhere to be seen on the cyber spectrum whatsoever. So typically the best way that we like to engage with clients is through MSP partnerships. And that means if you already have a managed service provider that's providing you with Office 365 support or Salesforce integration or even IT support, that's where we like to try to build our partnership so that we can come in and help from that perspective. So I would say if you have absolutely nothing, go to your IT manager. Go to your managed service provider if you have one for your IT, and talk to them first, because they will at least have a little bit of knowledge, or at least be able to provide you with somewhere to go to get this information. If you don't have that, then find some outside help, right? Find someone like our company, Cyber Lantern, that will come in and start to do a very basic level assessment with you. I like to apply, depending on the organization, I look for a few different types of frameworks or controls. We can use the NIST cybersecurity framework, depending on the size of the organization. Sometimes I like to go as basic as the CIS controls and just really work on that level 1, which is foundational or fundamental cybersecurity capabilities. And then again, it's just talking to the company, understanding what do they do, what are their pain points, and really identifying what are the highest priority risks first, and then trying to tackle those first. And that's really it. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's really just, hey, what are some of your biggest issues? And let's look to fix those first. It's just like a physical security, right? Except we're applying it to technology.
That's brilliant. I can't think of a better way to end the show than that. That was just so super insightful. I mean, and one more quick thing before Christian wraps things up. So if any of our viewers and listeners want to get a hold of you, how can they best reach you?
Go to cyberlantern.com. You can send us a message through there. You can send us an email. We will also be at 2 conferences next week. We will be at the Smart Cities Conference here in the Bay Area, and that's run by Adaptable Security. And you can reach that at adaptablesecurity.org. It's absolutely free. I think that's a great starting point, actually, for SMBs. And we will also be at the County Directorates Conference next week, too. So if you're a small business, or I'm sorry, not a small business, but a local government, you can hit us up there.
Awesome.
Very good. So thank you so much, Marcela, for sharing your wisdom and for sharing your story with us. And Dominic and I will be right back to wrap things up.
Well, Marcela was certainly an epic human with just incredible insight. Christian, I'm so curious to know what your key takeaway was from that discussion with her.
Well, there were many for me, but I would say it was surprising for me to hear what she recommends her clients to do, or recommends companies do as step one, which is to reach out to your IT company and see what resources they have available. It gave me hope that there are more great IT companies out there than I knew existed. So.
And it's such a great point, that she brought up. And, to me, one of the interesting things that she was talking about again was that different dynamic between public sector, private sector. She'd been someone who's worked for some of the largest organizations in the world. Working for the Department of National Defense in the U.S. and be able to work with small municipal counties as well. So being able how she shared the different nuances and the challenges in that, I found to be quite engaging, quite interesting. So we're very grateful to Marcela for joining us from the Bay Area and spending a little bit of her day with us on the Cybersecurity Matters podcast.
And being part of her epic life story as well, yes. In a small way.
Absolutely. And as always, we want to thank all our epic listeners and viewers for participating and joining us on the podcast. Please make sure to check out the Conversation That Matters YouTube page to check out previous episodes of our podcast, as well as a slew of other awesome podcasts under the Conversations That Matter banner. So as always, I feel like I'm rambling now. So what I usually say to my mother-in-law, get on with it or get out. But thank you again for joining with us. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you again on Cybersecurity Matters podcast.